Hey there everybody, this is Gary from Constricted and Addicted. Today we're going to talk about what is a superdwarf. One of the most common questions that I am asked is, how big is your superdwarf reticulated python going to get? I've got Georgia with me. She's very curious and she's already going where she really shouldn't. And the simple answer I can give you is, I do not know. Most of the people in the industry will tell you the superdwarf reticulated python will get somewhere between 8 and 10 feet long. But the reality is that's a guess. Nobody really knows how big these animals are going to get. Georgia is a possible 50% Kalatoa. There's a story behind her. I've done videos on her, but for all intent and purposes, we're going to call her a 50% Kalatoa. She's 4 years old. At 4 years old, she is just about 7 feet long. I have a receipt that tells me that she's 50% Kalatoa, but we really don't know. But the characteristics that she has that makes her possibly Kalatoa is A, her girth. She's not a very large, girthy snake. And at 4 years old, she's only 7 feet long. So she does have all the characteristics to possibly be Kalatoa. Is she done growing at 4 years old? Absolutely not. Possibility is she could get 10 feet long, she could get 12 feet long, she could get 14 feet long. As it is, she has a 100% female mother that was Kalatoa, and a 100% father that was mainland. That's what makes her a 50%. You take that 100% of the Kalatoa, you divide that by 2, and that gives you 50%. The offspring would be 50%. But just because you have a 50% Kalatoa does not necessarily mean that this animal is going to stay small. One of the things that I experience when I go on any sort of social media, let it be morph market even, and you see a 50% Kalatoa, one of the things I always look at is the size of the parents. Usually you see a 5-year-old female that was 8 feet long, or that was 10 feet long, and a 3-year-old male that was 5 feet long. So it kind of gives the person reading the article a misconception of that's how big that snake is going to get. But that snake is still young. That snake still has a lot of growing to do. So the reality is that superdwarf is just a marketing term for the reptile hobby. What it does is it gives somebody like me the opportunity to own a reticulated python that might not get 20 feet long. Here is Olive. Olive is a 68.75%, almost 69% Kalatoa superdwarf reticulated python. She was born in 2020. I want to say that she was produced by Chris McVicker. I could be wrong. She might have been purchased by Chris McVicker and then sold to me. But she is just an amazing animal. My experience with the superdwarf reticulated pythons, or the Kalatoas, is they're super, super curious. And they obviously are going to cost you a little more money when you get patterns like this. She is a platinum Kalatoa superdwarf, and she's just amazing. She's a little more active than most of my other retics. As you can see, she just likes to go. But it's very worth it because over the time that I've had her, we've built a relationship, we've built trust, and I really, really like this girl. Superdwarf reticulated pythons, like I said, they're a little bit more active than your mainland reticulated python, in my experience. Anybody who owns a mainland reticulated python is going to know that mainland reticulated pythons are just as active, but it seems to me that because of their size, they definitely like to go places faster. And it's not because they're trying to get away. It's because they're very explorative. They like to go, like to get into things. They like to go as far as they can. basically, they are using me for enrichment. So, and I love it. They don't like their tails touched at all. None of my retics do. If somebody was to ask me, well, she's 60, almost 69% Kalatoa, she's Superdwarf, she shouldn't get that big, right? Again, the answer is, I do not know. She might get 12 feet long. She might get 14 feet long. She's 2 years old right now, and she's just about a little over 5 foot long right now. But she's still growing. And she's only, like I said, she's only 2. So the one thing I do like about the Superdwarfs is they, like I said, they don't get as girthy as the mainland. The diameter of them stays pretty small. So the reality is that she may only get up to like an extra large rat at full grown. So this is an animal I would not have to be feeding pigs to. So what if you're scrolling on Morph Market and you come across a 25% Kalatoa? Does that mean that they're going to stay small? Again, it's a bet. It's a guess. This is Ruby. Ruby is my 25% Kalatoa golden child. She's just very, very active. It's a little warm in here, and I'm a little sticky, so obviously the snakes are sticking to me. It makes for some uncomfortable handling, I'm sure, for all of us, but at any rate, let me get her. She is just bound and determined to stay wrapped on me. 25% Kalatoa. She is just over a year old, and she's well over 6 feet long. So, but again, the girth. The girth is one of those things that she doesn't have a lot of. She's very, very determined to stay right where she's at. But she's a golden child, and the reality is that she probably could get somewhere, she might get, 16 feet long. It's unknown because of the fact that her percentage of Kalatoa is fairly small. I don't know. She's just about, she is larger than my other snakes would have been at 1 year old. So at 2 years old, we'll do a progress report of her and compare what she will be like at 2 years old. But this is Ruby. She was born in May of 2021, and just a beautiful, beautiful animal. Now here's another baby of mine I received from Chris McVicker that can prove that size and genetics don't always matter. This is Clarice. She is my lavender albino, 33% Kalatoa, 33% Giampea. Now she is 2 years old. She's the same age as Cora and Olive, yet she's much smaller. Her percentage is less, and she has dwarf in her. So how big is she going to get? The answer is, I don't know. She's probably coming on 3 years old now, and she's probably not even 5 feet long. See if I can get her to open up here. I mean, this is a 2.5-year-old, 33% Giampea, 33% Kalatoa. So in my experience and what I've read, when you introduce the dwarf gene to a reticulated python with a Superdwarf gene, you have the potential of a larger snake than the quote-unquote industry standard is. The way she's going, she might be smaller than all of my other quote-unquote dwarf, Superdwarf retics. She's got the same mannerisms, the same love, everything, and she is in shed right now. Her eyes are all glossed over. So we're going to go ahead and put her back. But she's just a loving animal. I love her. She's so good to have out. Reticulated pythons in general are just so inquisitive and curious. I love the trust that goes into these animals. Not just me with them, but even them with me. It's really a beautiful thing. We'll go ahead and let her get back to what she was doing. Let her get through her shed process, and we'll do a video on her when she's done. One of the major reasons I wanted to do this video was to basically keep people aware that when you hear the term dwarf and super dwarf, yes, that does necessarily mean that the animal that you are getting might be smaller than a mainland reticulated python. But it's also, you got to remember that sometimes they do get big, and they do get a lot bigger than maybe your breeder told you the snake would get, or maybe than what you read on the internet or you saw on a social media post. These animals, you will never know how big they get until they are the size they are. I go on YouTube quite regularly, and I very rarely see anybody post a 10-year-old Calotoa. I've seen Chris post I believe a 14-year-old Calotoa that was pretty large. I think it was close to 14 feet long. And he's a real big advocate about don't believe just because you've got a super dwarf, it's going to stay small forever. One of the last snakes I'm going to show you is Celia. Celia is my new dwarf. Now, she's not super dwarf. She is a slayer, and she is a 50% slayer with a 25% unknown super dwarf. And she is just about 3 months old. Just a beautiful, beautiful animal. I love this. And this is the greatest thing right here, is raising a baby retic to a full-grown retic. So we'll get a lot of updates on Celia. She was produced by Chris. Chris still has a couple of these left. Just amazingly beautiful animals. And the relationship that I'm building with this little girl right here, I just love watching her grow with me. She becomes very vulnerable with me for a very small snake and a very large human being. Make no mistake that I didn't get any of these animals with the assumption that they're only going to get, 10 or 12 feet long. I knew full well before buying any of them that their potential is to be larger than what internet or some breeders say. It's all genetics. The genetics is going to play out. The genetics is going to determine how big that snake gets. This little animal right here, she could get 14 to 16 feet long. And if you're going to have an animal that has the potential to get that large, you've got to make sure that you've got the ways to keep it, the ways to house it, to be able to interact with this animal when it's at its full size. They're very powerful animals, but yet they're very beautiful and majestic animals. I'm going to do one more snake real quick, and we'll end this video, so stay tuned. All right, so we're going to get Emma out. We're going to talk a little bit about Emma and just the main differences between owning a large snake like a mainland reticulated python versus a super dwarf. One of the things I don't do is I don't prepare these videos. I think about what do I want to do, and I feel really cheesy doing these videos. I like to do them. I like to share them with you. I like to share my animals with you. I really like interaction. So if you want me to post anything, if you want me to talk about anything, put it in the comments section below. One of the next videos I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Zoom call with Chris McVicker from New Shed Serpents, and I'm going to do all the snakes that I've purchased from him. He's been my go-to guy. I have learned a lot about super dwarf and dwarf retics from Chris. He's a no BS guy. He'll tell you like it is, and that's the kind of person that I want to buy my snakes from. So anyways, that's on down the line. I'm going to get her out. We're going to talk about Emma. We're going to talk about the super dwarfs, the dwarfs, and the subtle differences. If you are interested in purchasing one, what to look for, get in contact with the breeder who's got the snake, see what information you can get. And remember, if you're looking on Morph Market and you see that the female was 5 years old and was 10 to 12 feet long, remember that is not a full-grown animal. That is a young animal having babies. So let's get in. I don't know if you can see this. Emma unplugs the radiant heater. She's unplugged it every time I go to plug it back in. But it's like 100 and stupid outside, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. So we've all been doing videos. This would be my third time on doing a video on how to get a large reticulated python out safely. Of course, I keep the hide towards me as a shield. I'm going to use my hook. Just going to rub her, say, hey, I'm here. This is such a good girl. She just absolutely does not mind at all when I come in here and get her. But I do like to just have her acknowledge that I'm here. She's perfectly fine. And she's out. So here's Emma. Emma is my 3-year-old mainland reticulated python. Now, as you can see, she's much larger than the other animals that I have. Not only in length, but in girth too. She's got some size to her. She's very active, but she's not active as defensiveness or trying to get away. She is just curious, and I love handling her because as I see, you got this very large animal, and I don't feel that she poses a threat to me. Now, like I said, she has the potential to get very large. She can get somewhere to the tune of between 16 and 20 feet long. She's female. The female reticulated pythons do tend to get larger than the males. I don't keep male reticulated pythons for the simple reason is that during breeding season, they can be a little difficult to keep from my understanding. And with larger snakes, you got to keep an eye on them. You got to know where they're going to go. Otherwise, they're going to get somewhere you don't want them really quickly. But she's just a huge, I love her. She's just so curious and so tolerable. She lets me pretty much do anything to her. And she knows I'm not going to hurt her. This, to me, I know that not all reticulated pythons are like this. But I have seen many reticulated pythons with this personality, and they're just great pets. Absolutely great pets. So the question becomes, how do I own a pet like this, but not a 20-foot animal like this? And that's where people get misdirected to the Superdwarf. You hear the term Superdwarf and you think, oh my God, it's a smaller animal. And I'm not going to lie, that's the reason I bought my first Superdwarf. But I was also told that they can get larger than the anticipated or projected 8 to 10 feet or 10 to 12 feet, whatever that might be. They can get 14 to 16 feet. In my opinion, I still believe that 14 to 16 feet is smaller than 20 feet and it's still manageable. The other thing I like to take a look at is how old am I going to be when this animal is full size? Am I still going to be able to interact with this animal? Am I still going to be able to handle this animal? Am I still going to be able to take it out? We're all getting older. We don't stay young forever. And that's one of the things that I really want to take into consideration with my reptiles. My reptile collection to me right now is perfect. I love what I have, and I don't plan on adding anything else till I get to NARBC in Arlington. We'll see what happens there. But at any rate, I love my collection right now, and especially with Emma, she is like a full-time kid. I swear to God. And she's trying to get back in. We'll let her go back in. The retics, to me, they are the smartest captive bred reptile I believe you can own. I might be speaking out of turn, but I think they know their owners. I think they bond with their owners when you interact with them regularly. And I believe that with my Superdwarfs or my smaller retics, that because of my daily handling with these animals, that I've developed a relationship with them. They know who I am. I still use a hook to get them out, But when I go into their homes, they don't think they're automatically being fed. So, I mean, that I believe is a product of consistent handling, consistent interaction. And then the reward is that I've got these very docile, gentle giants that I get to interact with in my home. And we'll get Athena out real quick. Athena might be in shed. And she's right there, very difficult to get out, and she's right there. Now you might ask, why didn't you use a hook to get her out? The simple answer is that because I interact with her so much that I just believe that she's not going to strike at me. And again, that's how we get hurt. That's how things happen. But I just knew where she was. And when I lifted up that hide, she made no attempt to even acknowledge that I was there. But that's because, again, they're very socialized. They're very, very they're handled well. So that being said, you guys, I appreciate you watching. And like I said, I got some stuff coming up. Hopefully we can get Chris on in the next couple of weeks. We'll talk about new shed serpents and the animals that I have gotten from Chris. And until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.